We're playing the what if game on the Friday Lockdown Celtics podcast. What if Ime Udoka never did what he did? What if Desmond Bane was never traded away? Let's talk about it right now on the Lockdown Celtics podcast.
Be ever ready. Recognize the city of champs. Boston, baby, we do what you can't. Locked on number 18, Tatum and Brown, J-team, step back. We gon' wet that and slay teams. Of course, the Celtics, who else could it be? Screaming like KG with the Larry O.B. Karalis above average, assessing the team status. Best daily pod, no cap, salary matching. Clutch like Bird the DJ, keep John on replay. Prime time, dapping up the truth on the sideline. Raining J's, how it started, raising banners, how we finished. Locked on Celtics pod, home of the winners. B.
Hey there, welcome back to the Lockdown Celtics podcast right here on the Lockdown Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, Monday through Friday. That's when you got me here on the podcast. So subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, opening up your favorite podcasting app. Click that subscribe button. You can also hop onto the YouTube page, ring the bell to get notified when I drop a video. Get into that comment section. I'm sure this podcast today will generate a lot of conversation because we're playing the what if game. It's about what if a couple of decisions were made differently. I put out the call on Twitter. I got a ton of responses, so we're picking two, and we'll keep doing this throughout the course of the offseason. I'm John Karalis, by the way. I cover the Celtics for Boston Sports Journal. I used to play once upon a time. And today we're talking about this topic with our good friend Tom Westerholm. Tom, how you doing today, buddy?
What up? What if? What up?
What if? What up? What if? Yeah, the beauty of sports is there's always a what if. What if this? What if? And we got a ton of responses. And you can go back. I mean, you can go back to way back and get a like pretty significant what ifs. Like the one I referenced in my tweet was what if Larry Bird just hired somebody to do his mom's driveway, and didn't hurt his back? Like, that might have changed a few things about Celtics history.
Might have. Also, like a lot of responses, which will, potentially carry us as the offseason stretches on. You guys really helped us out.
Enough responses where we could play the what if game for a while.
Yeah, we might have. Yeah, we might have like a what if month.
Cool. But as you can see on the YouTube page, there are a couple. We're going to leave it to two because it's going to span the whole podcast for just these two. Later on, we'll talk about
because they have to last us a month.
And right, we're really going to dive deep and we're rationing topics. Now, later on, we'll talk about Desmond Bane because he just signed this massive extension, which he earned. He is one of the most important players for the Memphis Grizzlies. He's a hell of a player, and the Celtics had him right there with the 30th pick in the draft. That's coming up later. First, the Ime Udoka scandal is maybe the most popular response I got about what ifs. And it's important. The phrasing of this is important. And it's not what if the Celtics didn't fire Ime Udoka. That's not what I'm talking about, because Ime did what he did. He got what he deserved. I'm not going to sit here and not and try to belittle what he did. He did what he did. It was an HR case. That's what happens. I've seen people say, "Oh, it wasn't illegal." Like you don't have to you have to do something illegal to get fired from your job. You've just got to break team rules, and you can get fired from your job. So that's what he did. The question here is, what if he never broke the team rules? What if he just had some self-control and didn't? And I want to be clear here. He bailed on this team by doing this. He made a personal choice knowing that it was a potentially fireable offense, and he chose to do what he did rather than stick around and make sure that he was going to be part of this team. He made a choice, a personal choice, and he chose himself ahead of the Boston Celtics, the team that was in that locker room. And I don't think it's even framed that way in the locker room. He bailed on them. So I think players should be pissed at him, and I don't think they are. He bailed on them, and that's got to be the number one takeaway from the Ime Udoka thing. He made this choice, and that's that. So I want to put that out there.
No, I would echo it. I could not agree more. I think it is weird that you don't hear more vitriol. I mean, you hear some on, social media or whatever, but I think it's weird that you don't hear more vitriol toward this guy who like just really put the Celtics in the hardest position imaginable. I mean, if you're Joe Mazzulla, right? Like Joe hasn't said anything really positive or negative about Ime. I mean, he can't obviously, but I mean that if you're a Mazzulla, you must that. What an awful position to just be tossed into. I mean, you get to be head coach of the Celtics, that's nice, but just tough timing. And then all the players, all these guys who who spent the whole season with Ime, who really bought into his whole system, to just see all that get thrown away thrown away by Ime. Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think it's bizarre that we don't hear more of that kind of just heat toward him.
Right. He made this choice. And for a guy that was big on personal responsibility and accountability, that was his whole thing. Accountability.
Old guys accountable.
Exactly. And so he made this choice. You got to be held accountable. That's it. That was the rule. So let's pretend that Ime didn't bail on this team, that Ime actually had some sense in his head and said, you know what? I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to pursue this because I'm the head coach of the Boston Celtics. I'm not going to do this with somebody inside the Celtics organization. I'm going to be better, and I'm going to show my team, or I'm going to stick around for my team and not put that at risk. So let's pretend that he actually made a good decision rather than a terrible one. And where would the Celtics be? And it's an interesting question, because what's different about this team when Ime is the coach? And I think one of the things that stands out to me is Malcolm Brogdon and his role and how he was used. He signed off on getting a trade to the Celtics as part of Ime was the head coach. And I think they probably spoke. He had a vision. He kind of laid out how he wanted to use Brogdon. And I don't know how that differs from Mazzulla, but Mazzulla very clearly was 3-point shooting heavy guy. And that was never really the Ime Udoka style. So I think one of the first things you could look at is, I think Brogdon's role on this team might have been a little bit different. And maybe he would have been a little bit more of a distributor, or maybe he would have had more time to work with Tatum and Brown and work that trio never quite meshed the way it should have. And I think that, if anything, the product on the floor, aside from Joe's a big 3-point maniac and Ime is probably looking for a little bit more traditional ball movement offense, I think the player that might have been most impacted might have been Malcolm Brogdon.
I think that's a good call. I mean, the way Brogdon played was like you said, was very Joe Mazzulla-esque, right? We saw just so many threes. And I think, Mazzulla definitely, I wouldn't say he wanted mid-range jumpers or anything like that, but he did I think he liked kind of the variety a little bit, certainly more than Mazzulla did. And Brogdon, could do that stuff. Brogdon's, pretty well-rounded offensive player when he's healthy. He's a very solid player that way. I do think we would have seen differences with him. I think another guy, I would have been really interested to see what what Udoka would have done with Rob out at the start of the year. Like Rob was really integral to his defensive schemes, right? Like he was a very important player, that double big lineup. Like I would have been curious to see how he would have gone about that. Like, does he kind of go smaller to try to emphasize switching? Does he keep Grant? Does he put Grant Williams in the lineup? Does Grant all of a sudden have a much bigger role and a much more important role, and something that the Celtics maybe look to keep him? If maybe, I mean, like, look, Grant was after that playoff run. I mean, discussions about Grant were very friendly after last year, after he defended Giannis and defended KD and did all the stuff that he did in the playoffs. Like,
Yeah.
I wonder if Udoka, Mazzulla, these names keep getting interspersed. I wonder if Udoka would have had him in a better position, and a position that would have made him, a little bit more likely to stick around in Boston.
Yeah, and that now impacts Derek White.
Yes,
and that could be a big thing. I'll talk about Derek White in just a second. First, today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel lets you take your first swing at betting MLB on FanDuel to get you 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets, up to $200 in bonus bets if you win or lose. Bet $20 and you'll get $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 that you can spend betting on everything from the money line to the over-under to who you think is going to hit that first home run. All in an app that's safe and secure, super easy to use, and when you win, you get paid right away, instantly, because that's when you want your money when you win. There's no better place to bet on the MLB than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Sign up today. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon, and you get $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel's an official partner of Major League Baseball. It's the betting partner of the Locked On Podcast Network. Just ask you, if you're going to bet, go for it, but please gamble responsibly. Next week, we're back Monday through Friday, and then we're going to dial it down here on the Locked On Celtics podcast to 3 days a week in August, for all of August, and then the first few weeks of September. So, and then we go back to 5 days a week, because in 2 months, just 2 months away, the season will start up again. Let's continue our conversation about the what ifs with Tom Westerholm. And you brought up the double big lineup, and I think that's a great point, because I think the Celtics, first of all, they would have leaned more defense than offense. And we could have spent this whole podcast talking about Grant Williams and what he talked about on Old Man in the Three with JJ Redick. They released a 10-minute kind of teaser, and he talked about this stuff. With Ime, there was obviously a defensive focus. With Mazzulla, it was an offensive focus. So defense with Ime, offense with Joe Mazzulla. That's obvious. Like, we all knew that. I think that would have stayed with Udoka if he had stayed. I think Grant Williams, you're right. I think Grant Williams would have been more heavily emphasized. And I think he probably would have been, him instead of Derek White. Like, that was going to be the question, who was going to start? And Mazzulla goes with Derek White. I think Ime Udoka goes with Grant Williams, and Derek White comes off the bench. That changes so much. Now we're going down a different road. Does Derek White have the type of season, the shooting season that he has, that he had? Because part of what made him such a great shooter, I mean, he had all of this time to get in there and didn't have to worry about getting shots. He just was comfortable, and he made all defense. He probably wouldn't have made an all defense team coming off the bench. So I think Derek White's entire season goes very differently. He might have still been a good shooter.
Yeah.
That might, I'm not going to say he wouldn't have had the level of, like, the efficiency, but would he have had the usage? Would he have had the opportunity? They might have gone to Brogdon first and then Derek White. And because Udoka likes a more physical style of defense, I think Derek White gets de-emphasized. I think some of those DNPs, he probably gets like some DNPs or some like 10-minute games. And then you start keep pushing this forward. If that's the case, they're not trading Marcus Smart
Nope, that was it.
right
Yep.
now
That's what I was going to
because, like that's
say. Yep.
Marcus Smart's, and maybe they still do. Like, it's hard to say, but part of why they traded Marcus Smart is because they knew they had Derek White and they had this amazing year of Derek White. So, and it's funny because Smart's one of the guys that's really gone to bat for Ime Udoka, but you can make a very simple, draw a very simple line from Udoka doing what he did to Marcus Smart being in Memphis. Like, that's it. You don't have to drop too many dominoes to get to Udoka's decision-making is what led to the sequence of events that got Marcus Smart out of Boston. And Grant Williams might have still stayed in Boston. Now, who knows what the reaction, because the new CBA probably would have still been what it was, regardless of what Udoka did or didn't do. But the decisions the Celtics made as to who to keep and who to trade, I think Derek White might have been tradable this summer. And
Derek White might not have made it to the trade deadline. Like, if he's not getting used much, if he's like a 10-minute a game guy, like why would you hang on to him if you could trade him and bring back other value that would help you better? Like, yeah.
Honestly, I think Brogdon might have been the guy to still go. I think they might have made a more concerted effort to trade Brogdon. And because they did trade for Derek White. Udoka loved Derek White coming in. Like, I don't think they would have.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't think they would have. I don't think they would have just said, okay, he's out. But they might have over the summer said, if the scenario, and I don't think they go for Porzingis in the same way that they did this year. But maybe they do, who knows. But if the same scenario played itself out, you got to trade for Malcolm Brogdon sitting there, it falls apart. Your plan B, is your plan B still to trade Marcus Smart? Or would the plan B have shifted over to Derek White? I have a feeling that the plan B might have gone to Derek White because Udoka would have said, I need a Marcus Smart, the physical type of defender that he is. I need him on this team. And unfortunately, I love Derek White, but I can't, he's not big enough and he's not physical enough. And if we have to make a choice, we got to go that direction. Like, that's where I think it might, this summer might have gone.
Yeah, I could see that. I also would be curious to know, like, okay, so, you mentioned Porzingis, right? Like, I agree with you. I don't think that's not a Ime Udoka is coaching this team trade. That's very clearly a Joe Mazzulla is coaching this team.
Yeah.
I'd also be curious, like, okay, so what does this team look like if they don't play their absolute best, no questions asked, with a bullet basketball at the start of the season, right? Like, if the start of the year isn't like, because they might have shot well from three, but I don't think that they would have emphasized it as much as they did. I think that it would have looked a little bit different if Udoka was the coach.
I think Tatum and Brown play fewer minutes with Udoka as the head coach because that was a point of emphasis for them coming out of last season. And I think Joe, one of his things was, we got to win. He was so, and I don't want to say, I don't know how else to say it. He was so hell-bent on winning that he was going to do anything he needed to do to win. But, and somebody listening is like, yeah, you're supposed to be hell-bent on winning. But I think Ime would have known this is a marathon, not a sprint, like that cliche. And we're not going to sacrifice wins down the road in exchange for wins now. So they came out firing. They were the best offense in the history of the NBA for a couple of months. That's not happening with Ime. They come out, I think they use more of their bench. They go deeper. They limit Tatum and Brown's minutes, which means, I don't know, does Tatum hurt his thumb or not? Like, maybe Tatum's thumb doesn't get injured the way it did. Maybe they climb they make a late run and they climb to the top seed, or instead of making that, they had the top seed and then they lost it because Milwaukee had a stupid run, but maybe Boston just lays in wait and makes their run, and things change that way. I guess the number one question as we wrap this up, let's answer this after I take a little break, but the number one question is, would they have won a championship with Ime versus with Joe Mazzulla? We'll do that in just a second. I want to thank everybody for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Check out the Locked On NBA podcast I host on Wednesdays with Jake Madison of the Locked On Pelicans podcast. Rotating hosts all week. We're Monday through Friday throughout the whole offseason. So check out Locked On NBA. Got the league covered like nobody else. Tom, let's answer that question. What do you think? Do the Celtics still win the championship with Ime Udoka? Or do the Celtics win a championship with Ime Udoka, or do they still fall short?
I think that the answer, yeah, maybe.
Maybe. Right.
Maybe. Maybe. No, but kind of leaning toward the, I could see it,
Yeah.
This is a good basketball team that was thrown for a complete loop right at the start of the season. This was a championship team that brought in Malcolm Brogdon and had a rhythm to it and had a, kind of a system to it. And I think, we were talking about at the beginning of the pod, the fact that you kind of go yeah, I think they might have won a title when you talk about the Celtics and you talk about the team that they would have had. How are the players not angrier at Ime Udoka?
Yeah.
Because I mean, they had a great opportunity to win a title this season. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it just I mean, honestly, good for Joe Mazzulla for getting this team to 57 wins, for getting this team to second in both, offensive, defense, right? All that stuff. Good for the players for doing that, for rallying together and doing all that stuff. But this season was a mess from the very start. And, that's just tough to bounce back from. So, yeah, I think are they going to, would the Celtics have beaten the field? I don't know. I hate saying yes on that, because it's then you're betting against Nikola Jokic, then you're betting against, all this stuff. But yeah, I mean, if it was just yes or no, yeah, I definitely could have seen it.
Here's the reason why I lean towards yes. It's because in that Grant Williams interview, the one thing he said was, Ime would take some time. If you weren't playing hard, he would sit you down and be like, stop BSing your way through this game. Go out there and actually play. And that's something that I don't think Mazzulla had in him. He gotten into them once or twice. And it's not I think there's a misconception about how he coaches. It's a very Brad Stevens kind of thing. People thought that golly gee shucks, Indiana kind of attitude was how Brad was in practice, and it's not. He'd MF those guys, and so will Joe. He'll get on their cases, absolutely. But in the game, Udoka would be much more willing to take a quick timeout. You don't have those timeouts that don't, he's not letting guys go through. He'd call that quick timeout, sit the guys down, not even take the clipboard, and just spend the whole time cussing them out and saying, get out there and play harder. And I think that's what these guys need. It's the number one thing that these guys need is a hard ass. And that's, there isn't one in the locker room. There isn't one in the locker room, right? They're a bunch of good dudes. They're a bunch of very nice young men. And I just said in the last podcast, if I had a daughter that was of that age and she brought home one of the current Boston Celtics and said, we're getting married, I'd be like, cool. These are all very fine young men, but none of them have that edge, that FU edge that Udoka has, that kind of pushed them when they needed to be pushed. So I do lean yes, because this is a team that did get to Game 7, and I like the way they match up against Denver. So let's pretend everything else was the same. I think I think they get through the playoffs a little bit more easily. And I like the way they match up. So I don't think they limp into a series against Denver. They've played the Nuggets well historically. And so I don't want to take anything away from the Nuggets because they definitely earned their championship. I just think the little bits that Udoka had where Mazzulla fell short, just experience and that attitude that I think the Celtics just needed, that for no fault of his own, Mazzulla lacked, and they're hoping to fix with Sam Cassell. It's just as simple as that. Now, I'm not saying it's guaranteed because nothing's guaranteed. And Denver might have won that series because all things being the same, they played their asses off in that series, and they won that championship. They earned that championship. But
they have the best player in the world, you know.
Yeah. And
like,
so I think
tough to beat that.
Ultimately, the team with the MVP wins the title. So I can't sit there and be like, yes, but I don't know. I think Tatum plays better. I think he plays, with more kind of oomph. I think Tatum, Jaylen plays a little bit better. So yeah, I think that's the case. So, but yeah, I'll finish. My final thought is the same thing that you just said. If you think yes, you shouldn't be mad at Brad Stevens. You should be mad at Ime Udoka because of the choice that Ime made. He had a choice to make a different decision and avoid all of this, and he didn't do it. That's the bottom line. So don't place your rage somewhere else. He made that choice, and he had to face the consequences. And it sucks because I liked Ime Udoka. I do think he's a hell of a coach, but he did what he did, and that's that.
And I don't want to shortchange Desmond Bane and our chance to rip on Enes Kanter at all, but I do want to say that the other thing is, like, if you think that Brad wanted to fire his head coach on September 28 or whatever it is, if you think that Brad, like, come on, like that,
the last thing he wanted to do,
like, literally the last thing, because Brad knew too how close this team was to a title. So,
all right, let's make fun of Enes Kanter.
All right, yeah, let's do it.
The next what if, and I don't think I need to spend a lot of time on it, so that's why I kept pushing it towards the end. But what if they never traded Desmond Bane? So the situation is in the 2020 draft, the Celtics had Enes Kanter. They needed to dump him. So 3-team trade sent Enes Kanter to Portland.
He was still Kanter at this time, by the way.
At that point, yes, he was still Kanter. So it sent. We're being historically significant.
Yes, correct.
Accurate. It sent then Enes Kanter to Portland. Mario Hezonja, who some people still believe has NBA talent somewhere left in him. Hezonja to Memphis. The Celtics had to send a first-round pick. That was the 30th overall pick, which ended up being Desmond Bane. And he obviously went to Memphis. He's having an amazing career in Memphis. But what if he had joined the Boston Celtics instead? Tom, I'm a big believer in situation matters. I know you're a big believer in shooters. So I know you think, ahead of time, I can feel you saying that this is what Desmond Bane was always going to be, and the Celtics blew it. I question whether the situation would have been right for him in Boston, and I question whether he would have gotten the same opportunity to show what he showed in Memphis, where he had more opportunity. So I'm skeptical about whether he would have been this good in Boston. But you think?
I think that trading anything to get Enes off your team is a worthwhile conversation to have.
Yes.
Right? Like, you got to get him off your team. Like, post haste, get that man off your team. So if that requires you to trade an all-star, a future all-star, then I guess you do what you got to do. The thing that to me makes this like just an unbelievable failing is the fact that they went and got him again after doing this.
That's the ultimate kick in the crotch, that they They gave up a first round pick to move Enes Kanter, and then they brought him back. And didn't they have to attach another pick to get rid of him? Or no, they just cut him.
No, I don't think they did.
Yeah, they just cut him. So, but anyway.
So all right. So okay, I do like Desmond Bane. I mean, obviously, he's really, really good player. I think there's a bunch of interesting kind of sliding doors with that one, right? Because it's like, okay, for one thing, if it like, let's just say, that situation doesn't matter in this case, and Desmond Bane is, 85-90% of what he is in, because obviously Memphis' situation for him was ideal. Let's say that he's 85 to 90% of what he is in Memphis in Boston, right?
Mm-hmm.
You probably don't trade for Malcolm Brogdon in that case, right? I mean, like, so that's like, if you've got this guy on your bench already who's just lighting it up and you're like, wow, we really need opportunities for this guy, I don't think you go out and you get another guard. You still in that instance can use that collection of assets that you have, right? Because you have Aaron Nesmith, you have you have the pieces to go trade some stuff, like to go get something. Maybe you're able to do that. That at this point though, Bane just got this big extension. If you're the Celtics, all of a sudden you've got a big Bane extension. You've got Jaylen, you've got Tatum, you've got like, you still have this like big contract crunch. I just think there's a lot of weird stuff that changes if Bane is the guy. And I mean, look, maybe you attach Nesmith to get off, Kanter's money like a year down the road or something. I don't know. A lot of weird stuff with this one. Like it's almost too odd to really dig into. Like, because it could have branched in a lot of weird different directions, but the long and the short of it is that the Celtics traded Enes to lost out on Bane to get rid of Enes and then brought him back shortly afterward. That's the big takeaway here.
So the question when it comes to Bane is opportunity. Okay, his rookie year in Memphis, he had 22 minutes a game. He was able to take 7 shots, 4 3-pointers a game. And that very clearly opened up a lot of opportunity, because the next year he ended up getting 30 minutes a game and doubling the amount of shots. And all of a sudden he's averaging twice as many points and all of that. So the number one question is, rookie year Memphis, 68 games, 17 starts. Does he get that opportunity on a Celtics team starting Tatum, Brown, Smart, Kemba Walker? Does he crack that rotation for 17 starts? I don't know that he does.
Yeah.
And then the big thing is off the bench. Where do they go off the bench? Does he crack that? Aaron Nesmith played 46 games, 14 and a half minutes. Does he get all of those? Because Nesmith was drafted ahead of Bane, right? 14th in that draft.
Right. So I mean, Romeo was drafted 14th as well, and he wasn't exactly, he wasn't exactly playing huge minutes then either.
But what I'm saying is the Celtics had a lottery pick in Nesmith, and they have Nesmith. They did still have Romeo Langford at that point that they're trying to develop. Danny Ainge loved Romeo Langford. And then you bring Desmond Bane into that mix. Does he crack that rotation enough to do what he did in Memphis his rookie year to earn that spot? That's the key question here. And this is why I always say opportunity, situation matters. I don't know that he gets the same opportunity his rookie year in Boston on a team. Like I said, it's got Kemba, it's got Smart, you got Jaylen and Jayson. You're fighting for something here. What did they do that year? They lost in the first round.
That was the
That was right. That was the Brooklyn series.
Yeah.
But the previous season they went to the Eastern Conference Finals. That was the bubble, I believe. That's a team that's been fighting for trying to get to that breakthrough and get to the NBA Finals. Are they going to give a rookie in Bane the type of opportunity that he got on a Memphis team that had the opportunity? I think that's the biggest question.
I mean, I think maybe, like, if you go through the minutes played on that, like if you sort the minutes played, right? Like, you got like, Evan Fournier's on there. I mean, like,
that was a midseason trade.
That was a midseason trade. He would have had opportunities before Fournier came in. Fournier was 5th in minutes played, right? Like, per game. Like, then you go down, you got Tice, Tristan Thompson. Those are bigs, obviously not. Then you got Peyton Pritchard. Pritchard played 19.2 minutes per game, in 66 games. Like, that's not nothing. Like, Pritchard impressed some people in those minutes. I think Bane would have had a chance to impress some people and would have had a chance to kind of carve out a role. I think look, I think Desmond Bane is a much better player than Peyton Pritchard, right? And like, I think Pritchard had enough time to, like, not quite be in the rotation, but like to be at that kind of bottom end of it. Like we were talking about yesterday with Grant, right? Like, Grant was like right at the bottom of the Celtics rotation this year. I mean, like, that's where Pritchard was. I think those minutes definitely would have gone to Bane, like, because I just think he's a lot better. So, like, I think there, and then, again, you're right about the starts, certainly, but I do think, like, Bane would have had plenty of opportunities, and it might have been something a little bit more similar to like Anthony Simons in Portland, right? Where they're like, for 2 years, all you're hearing out of Portland is like, no, we love Anthony Simons. We think he's great.
Yeah.
He just doesn't have a lot of minutes behind Lillard. I think you might have seen a little bit more of that. Yeah, like, maybe that would have influenced some decisions the Celtics made over the next season or two.
Here's the thing: that 2019 Memphis Grizzlies 33 wins, 2020 Memphis Grizzlies 34 wins. That's where you get Bane in the draft. Then they win 38 games. Okay, they miss the playoffs. That's a team with opportunity. That's a team to let you go out there and make your mistakes and show what you got. Now, Bane, the argument is he's so good that, obviously he's an all-star level player. He's a 20 plus per game scorer. You'd think that a guy that good is going to find out that he's that good. Somehow he's going to go in there and he's going to take the opportunity in Boston, which is absolutely, plausible. Right. But I just can't shake think about how Brad has talked about some of the younger guys on this team. And, you got to get past all of these. He'll list all the guys, like, you're not better than these 5 guys who are guards. So you're not going to play ahead of those guys, right? Like, Bane at that point was not better than, because he's a rookie, the 4 or 5 guys in that rotation on the perimeter. Now, today,
he wasn't better than the starters, but he was better than all the bench guys. He might have been better than the bench guys. He
might have been, but like, you still have like Kemba and Marcus. Like, what I'm saying is he has to beat out, like, to get that opportunity. Those guys are getting a ton of the minutes, and he still has to beat out Nesmith and Langford and all those. Like, it's not a given. It's not a given that Brad Stevens just says, oh, here's Desmond Bane. Like, you can say he is obviously good enough to have beaten those guys out, but also we don't know in that situation what Brad Stevens is looking for. He could sit there and be like, yeah, he's good, but he doesn't have the type of size that we need. So we're going to give Romeo a little extra look because he's big enough and he's a good enough defender that we're going to give him some of those minutes at the beginning of the season, right? You can say what you say about Bane. Like, now we have the hindsight, and now it sounds stupid to say Romeo Langford ahead of Desmond Bane, because it would be. But in that moment, as a rookie coming in with a training camp, what's he going to show you in training camp? Like, is he going to wow you so much in training camp? He's like, whoa, holy crap. We got to throw him in there.
To be clear, I mean, I like Romeo as a kid, right? But like, as like a dude, right? But like, it wasn't that hard to like wow you more than Romeo Langford. Right?
No, right. Like, what I'm saying is, like, okay, here's a kid who made some shots, but also Desmond Bane is 6'5" and Romeo and short arms, and Romeo Langford is a little bit taller with a longer wingspan. And like, I can see a Brad Stevens led team that's fighting for a championship that's going to say, here's a guy that we've been working on our system. Let's come out of camp and give him the opportunity to start right at the beginning, the first few months. And all that is to say that cuts into the chance for Desmond Bane to grow into the player that he is today. Because the Celtics have other guys that they've been working on and other guys with certain skill sets that they say, hey, look, he's still a good defender. We want to make sure that we have Romeo in there for these few minutes as a defender. Like they did use him. They picked Nesmith 14th. So they're obviously going to lean towards, hey, this is our lottery guy. He's got the higher salary. Let's give him a little more opportunity to go out there, because Nesmith was supposed to be the absolute sniper coming out of college.
But they didn't do that though. Like they still, like Pritchard was picked 26th. Pritchard played more games and more minutes than Nesmith that season. Like they didn't give like Pritchard, you know, is shorter and I don't know,
Sure.
probably similar wingspan. I just think Brad's gonna I think Brad would spot this stuff, right? Like I think Brad would be able to look at Desmond Bane when he you know, Brad's he's a great coach. He was a great coach. He's, you know, really good basketball operations guy. I think he would have been able to see the potential in Bane and would have been like let's see what we got here. Like there just wasn't that much there with Nesmith. There wasn't that much there with Romeo. I think you get Desmond Bane into your system and you know, like clearly there was something there. I mean, I don't doubt that like the opportunity was something, but like, I think that there's clearly enough talent with Bane that he would have easily outstripped Nesmith, that he would have easily outstripped Romeo. And once you've done that, you know, it's like a pretty straight shot into some kind of rotation minutes.
And that is entirely possible. It's entirely possible that he obviously is really, really good, right? He's obviously that good, and he's grown into that. But, you know, even in Memphis, he only played, 22 minutes a game. So,
well, but I think that works in favor of this case, because then he proved himself in limited minutes, right? Like, because then he got limited minutes in Memphis his first year too.
Yeah, I just think that the way the Celtics were built, and knowing Brad Stevens, I still feel like there is still the tendency to give those minutes. Like they had Shemi Ojale on the team that got minutes, right? Like Brad Stevens kept giving Shemi Ojale opportunities. Like I know how insane it sounds now to say that. Why would you even think Shemi Ojale would outplay Desmond Bane? It's not that he would outplay. I'm not saying he's going to outplay. I'm saying that training camp is limited. He has limited opportunity to show what he has. And there are other guys that they're going to give chances to by virtue of having been there and having been drafted higher and all of that stuff, that are going to, any one of those guys that gets a look is a guy that takes minutes away from Bane. And maybe he still grows into this kind of player, but maybe it doesn't happen as quickly. Maybe it doesn't happen in year 2 or year 3. But I just think that situation matters so much in the NBA that I don't know that he would have gotten to this level this quickly if he had been drafted 30th by the Celtics. I think there would have been roadblocks. And hey, he's obviously good enough, but also if he's in that situation, you don't know what kind of mental toll it would have taken. Would he have lost any confidence in himself that he got to build the confidence in Memphis because they gave him the opportunity to just go out there and play? Would he have lost any confidence in Boston? Would he have gone into a shooting slump in Boston that kind of would have cost him an opportunity? So many different things, so many different situations that it's hard to say with any level of certainty. We know that Desmond Bane is an incredible player and that incredible players will find their way to prominence somehow. I just don't think it would have happened the exact same way that it did. I don't think he would have walked into Boston, a team fighting for the finals, and gotten the level of opportunity that he got in Memphis.
Okay, all right. My last case on this, though. I think, okay, so Pritchard, right? 19.2 minutes per game in that season, that 2022 or 2020-21 season. Bane, 22.3. So only 3 minutes more per game. You take away a minute from, like a minute from Neesmith, a minute from another guy. Pretty easy to like pencil in 3 minutes. Desmond Bane, that season, 7.3 field goal attempts per game in 2021. Pritchard, 6.3. So
okay, hold on.
Like,
so
precisely one more field goal attempt per game, right? So
yeah.
So it like, and that, very easily could just be the 3 extra minutes. I'm just saying, just take Peyton Pritchard out of the equation. Like, I think Desmond Bane would have outplayed Peyton Pritchard for those roles. And if you do that, like Pritchard and Bane were the same level of experience. The same, they were both rookies. They were both coming out of that draft. Like Pritchard was drafted 4 slots ahead of Bane. I don't think that would have mattered much. I think that the opportunity could have been at least somewhat similar for his first year in Boston. I don't think the Celtics depth that year would have kept Bane out of the rotation. I think that their starters were obviously better than the starters in Memphis, but like the depth, like the second unit stuff, like if Bane showed kind of what he showed his rookie year, I think he would have gotten real opportunities in Boston, because I think the Celtics would have been like, oh my gosh, like bench production. Yes, please sign me up immediately. So that's my case. I think the numbers, I think if you just erase Peyton Pritchard from the rotation, like I think Bane could have done that. And,
but why erase Peyton Pritchard from the rotation? Because
Desmond Bane is so much better.
Okay, he's so much better, but that's how good Peyton Pritchard was as a rookie, and he shot 41% from 3. Desmond Bane shot 43% from 3 as a rookie. So they shot about the same, and they clearly Pritchard got this opportunity, and so like,
but then you carry it over to the next season, right? Because then Pritchard like didn't impress enough in camp or whatever to break into the rotation. Bane took a very similar opportunity to the one Pritchard had and was so good the next year in Memphis. That would be my case.
So just to be clear, I obviously know that Desmond Bane is much better than all of these players. But my argument is, in that situation, all of these players had stakes to play ahead of this particular rookie, the 30th overall pick, who I don't know what he would have done in that camp. Now, you got to, boy, this podcast is going so long.
I know. we never should have we never should have given ourselves the opportunity to make fun of Enes Kanter.
I know. Would he have been the exact same guy in Celtics camp versus Grizzlies camp? Because he would have had to go up against Tatum and Brown and Kemba and Smart. And would he have looked exactly the same in that camp versus going up in the Memphis camp, where he's what was his guard competition? Grayson Allen, Tyus Jones, D'Anthony Melton, and a young John Morant. Clearly younger, just a lot more fluid in that camp. My argument is the Celtics, being a team with championship hopes, would not have had the same opportunity from day one for Bane to show exactly what he showed in Memphis. And I know how good he is in Memphis. The question is, would he have gotten that opportunity in camp to say, wow, he is actually outplaying some of these other guys? Maybe he would have, maybe he wouldn't have. But the Celtics did also draft Aaron Neesmith 14. They did also have Romeo Langford on that team that they invested time in. They did have Peyton Pritchard on that team, who impressed enough to get some opportunity, right? And all of these guys are guys with opportunities to take minutes away from Bane. And so you can say, take a minute here, take a minute there, but that's not how it works. Guys would either not play, they're either playing or not playing. And I think there's a possibility that they say, maybe we don't play him quite as much, and he doesn't get the 22 minutes that he got in Memphis. Maybe he gets 12, and maybe that's enough to impress, and maybe that's enough to get them through that next season, the Celtics, into that next season. Because that next season, who did they have? They had, maybe they don't get Schroeder, maybe that's, maybe it's a different situation there. And
I'm sold. The Celtics would have won 3 titles by now if they had gotten to.
That's the first year of Ime Udoka. And how would have Bane worked under Ime Udoka? Like, maybe he would have blossomed. I don't know. Probably would have done well. I think we can probably say would have done well. But my point is, one team had the opportunity, and it's like planting a flower, and you put it in a huge pot, it's going to grow into the pot that it's given. If you put a flower into a little cup, it's only going to grow a certain amount because it's only got that little cup. It's only got so much. So I think the Celtics had the cup, and you just had to hope that the situation was at a point where they would have said, hey, we got to give this guy more opportunity because he's that good. You got to hope that they recognize that and hope that he continued to progress at the exact same pace that he progressed in Memphis, and that he didn't have a setback, that he didn't lose his confidence, that he didn't lose his shooting touch because he's not, getting the opportunity, or he didn't get pissed off and say, you know what, I'm out of here, I'm demanding a trade, or any craziness like that. Like, you just don't, the exact path that he took in Memphis would not be the exact path he took in Boston. And whether you get to the same ending on a different path is up for some debate. I still think he'd probably ultimately end up being a really good player because that's what he is. But the opportunity is the opportunity. And if it's not there, it's not there. I got to wrap this show up, man. This is...
I know. I was like, nah, I got nothing else. I'm not going to...
Yeah.
Hey, man. We're giving the people...
It's a Friday show. It's a Friday show.
We're giving people a 53 minutes of content on a Thursday in July, a Friday in July. Yeah. Y'all welcome.
Yeah. No, let's see. Play it, pause it, pick it back up over the weekend, finish it.
Yeah.
I guess if you're hearing me say that now, then you've done all of those things. I got to go back into the middle of the podcast and say, okay, guys, we're going to go off the rails a little bit here. Tom, thank you very much.
Appreciate you, man.
Whew. My bosses are going to be mad at me. Hopefully everybody's on vacation there. This is like a Friday news dump. It's like Friday in late July. No one's going to notice that I'm dumping a 54-minute podcast. We're supposed to be 30 minutes, but hey, this is how much we love the Celtics and we love talking basketball. We could have easily gone on for probably another half an hour just on Desmond Bane. We had to cut off the Ime Udoka conversation. Whew. If you don't subscribe after all of that, then I don't know what's going to take. Thank you so much if you have subscribed. I appreciate that. Regular listeners, I hope you find it in your heart to share the podcast. Tell your friends. Tell everybody they should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.